It's Friday, November 8th, 2024, and Fridays are Ask or Tell Me Anything next on the AM Update. Well, what a week that was. Thanks for hanging out with me every morning on AM Update. Appreciate each and every one of you. I need a break, so I'm going to be out on Monday, and we're not going to be in for No Suck Saturday on Saturday either. We had planned to start Mere Christianity on Saturday, but again, still trying to get over this cold. And like I said, I need a break. I'm starting to burn out. It's a historic week in the United States. I want to maybe clarify something that I said the other day. I put this in tweet form as well, talking about Donald Trump as a legend. I think the fact that somebody like me, who, you know, I'm not a fan of his personality, that doesn't matter anymore. And I've been very critical of him in the past, and when he warrants it, you know, that's going to be the case going forward. The thing about him being a legend, the fact that I would say that, you can take that as a compliment to him. Somebody like me would say that. But really, my intention behind that, not that I've gotten a lot of questions about this or anything, or any, to be honest, but it's something that's kind of stuck out in my mind. My intention behind saying that is more of an objective statement more than it is anything else. I think if you're going to be able to analyze this world that we live in right now, politically, culturally, you have to come to grips with the fact that he is a larger-than-life figure, at least on the right side of the aisle. If you don't recognize that and you don't see that for what it is, then you're going to have a really difficult time, I think, analyzing anything else. Any news that comes out, any development that comes out of Washington, D.C. when it comes to political machinations, moves, things of that nature. So, I don't know, that's just stuck out in my mind a couple of times the last few days. I wanted to make that addendum. Let's get to Ask or Tell Me Anything. We begin with Brett Haugen, who says the cheering during Kamala's concession speech was not for the peaceful transfer of power to literally Hitler, but because peaceful transfer of power was a jab about J6th and what they think about Trump's behavior after 2020. Yes, what did they think about... Keep up, Brett. What did they think about Trump's behavior after 2020? They thought that he was not handing over power peacefully, which is wrong. And so now they are cheering a peaceful transfer of power to a person that they've called literally Hitler or Hitler. So, yes, they were cheering because of the peaceful transfer of power to literally Hitler. Okay, you're trying to overcomplicate this by saying the same thing in a different way. So, it doesn't... I got into an exchange with a lefty who... We're talking about people who do not deal in logic. It's just emotion and power and the will to power. It's like Voldemort. There's no good and evil. There's only power, and those who too weak to obtain it. And boy, my voice is about to give out already. So they're not thinking through. Oh yeah, that's a good jab. No, they're not thinking through things like you are, Brett. So yeah, they were applauding the peaceful transfer of power to a person they've called Hitler. No matter how you slice it, that's what they were doing, because they don't recognize the incongruence of that statement. Clinton Shaw, quote tweeting Jeb Bush, says, Susie Wiles is a great choice for President Trump's chief of staff. And Clinton asks, is this bad? Okay. If you would have asked me 6-7 months ago, I would have said, yeah, absolutely, that's a bad thing. Because I think Susie Wiles at one point was a registered foreign agent of China. Now, I just learned yesterday she's also the daughter of Pat Summerall. Let me make sure. Summerall. She's the daughter of Pat Summerall. Yeah. Which is quite interesting. Let me just make sure. Yeah, Pat Summerall was her father. Legendary sportscaster. Who worked for CBS and Fox, among other networks. So you can't get much more American than Pat Summerall, I don't think. During the GOP primary that wasn't, I was like, what the heck is Donald Trump doing? I've heard some things, though, seen some rumblings that she is actually kind of more of a stone cold killer than anything, politically anyway. So I don't know. Again, if you would have asked me 6-7 months ago, Susie Wiles, good pick, I would have said absolutely not. But somebody who was, or still is, or used to be an agent, registered foreign agent, or whatever it's called, for China. Why would you want her anywhere near power? But Obviously, she ran a really good campaign. It was a really good campaign. The best campaign primary general that Trump has ever won. And I think that's just an objective fact. Yeah, he got a little bit off message towards the end, but overall, from DNC onward, that was one of the best political campaigns that I've ever seen. So, time will tell, Clinton. Clinton also has the story out from South Carolina about 40 monkeys having escaped a bioresearch lab. Monkeys escaping a bioresearch lab in South Carolina. Did we just get up yesterday morning and play Mad Libs? We're going to have monkeys escape a bioresearch lab in South Carolina. That happened. Apparently, they've put up traps for these monkeys and are telling citizens of the area where they escaped to be on the lookout and keep their windows closed. That's pretty good idea. Ryan, the Christo-fascist, also sent me that story too. Steve Senny says, do you think that with all the liberal meltdowns going on, it'll cause a global warming crisis where the ice caps melt, the oceans rise, and we're forced to make rafts like Tom Hanks in Castaway? Asking for the lefties on X. Yes, Steve, that is a very real possibility from what I have seen. Country Squire says, using a Lord of the Rings analogy, this election was not the Battle of Helm's Deep. It was exiling Wormtongue and restoring the rightful leader. You know what? That's not a bad analogy at all, because really, that's a great analogy, because really it wasn't President Joe Biden was not really the president. It was anybody who was in his ear at any given time. Wormtongue was president. That's a great analogy. I love that analogy, Country Squire. That was ousting Wormtongue, who was the de facto leader, basically casting a spell over Theoden, removing him, and restoring Theoden as the rightful leader. Well done. T-Money says, calling out the media's playbook before they do it is an absolute game changer. Do you agree? So this is a clip from J.D. Vance on Tucker Carlson laying out exactly what happens next. Let's take a listen.
Trump's main campaign platforms, one of the main things that he talks about, and of course, I think he learned in some ways the hard way during his first 4 years in office, is the president recognizes that if you have people in your government who you tell to do something and they disobey you, that's not like checks and balances. They're part of your government. The check and balance is the House, the Senate, the judiciary, exactly. Right? If the people in your own government aren't obeying you, you have got to get rid of them and replace them with people who are responsive to what the president is trying to do. If you don't have that, you don't have a real democratic accountability.
You've got to be a nut cutter, because that's the system at stake.
That's right.
That's democratic control. How do voters have any control over their government if the people they elect have no control?
That's exactly right, man. And again, it's we have to sort of remind ourselves that it's real people who suffer because of this, right? There are Americans who are dead because the Joint Chiefs of Staff didn't listen to the President of the United States when he said you need to do troop redeployments out of Syria. There are veterans who are dead because the VA does not function as well as it could, because the president needs to be able to fire, again, the small number of people who aren't doing their job. And that same story repeats itself, rinse and repeat through the entire American government. You have got to have basic democratic accountability. And I think, most Americans recognize, look, we're fine with, bureaucrats making a reasonable salary. We're fine with people having a good life, but they've got to do their job, right?
So that is J.D. Vance talking to Tucker Carlson about what the next steps are for not the Trump campaign, but the Trump transition team. 3 bullet points is the video from Colin Rugg. 3 bullet points that J.D. Vance gets to there: firing all the people in the federal government who will obstruct President Trump. Number 2, the media is going to manipulate everybody they can to make sure the American people don't get what they voted for. And number 3, Trump's going to start mass deportations, which is going to trigger the media to release fake public polls claiming Americans don't actually support mass deportations, even though they do. So, yeah, and so T-Money, you're the one who sent that. Calling out the media's playbook before they do it is an absolute game changer. Do you agree? Yes. Yes, I do. And this is one of the biggest signs of optimism that I have, even post-election. Not just because of the election, but post-election. The very next morning, I started to see rumblings on Twitter, like actual rumblings, that the transition team is already working. They're not wasting any time right now. A few things I've heard as well is they are deep in the process of vetting several people for cabinet positions, and they're good people, like good people. They don't have their Donald Trump, and he was the leader, he was the president, so he takes responsibility for this. And to his credit, he has taken responsibility for this multiple times, especially down the campaign stretch, of saying, I did not hire the best people. I didn't know what I was doing, really. That's what he said, for all intents and purposes. It's clear this time is very much different from what I'm seeing and hearing. They do not have their you-know-what's flapping in the wind this time. I think the day after the inauguration, maybe the day of the inauguration, they are going to come out swinging. So whether or not they can actually execute that, it remains to be seen, but it's a different story, at least from what I've seen so far, than 2016, 2017. All right, I feel bad, but my voice is about to give out, so let's take one more. Let's go to who's in your ideal Trump cabinet. Let's go with Attorney General, Secretary of Defense, and Secretary of State, and anyone else who stands out. Thanks. Okay, Attorney General, I would go with Ted Cruz or Ron DeSantis. Secretary of Defense, whichever one does not take Attorney General, I would give Secretary of Defense, probably more likely to Ron DeSantis than Ted Cruz. Secretary of State. Boy, that's a good question. You need a loyalist in there, for sure. You remember Rex Tillerson, the oil guy, was Secretary of State for a while? Secretary of State. An America First Secretary of State. Oh, man. You know what? Let's do this. Let's do Ted Cruz, Secretary of State, Attorney General Mike Lee, and Secretary of Defense Ron DeSantis. How about that? I'm seeing things, and this is disappointing, but not entirely surprising. Now that the kind of fog of war of the election is winding down, I've seen a few longtime Trump loyalists on Twitter, or X. They are still crapping all over Ron DeSantis. It's like there's an element over there of the always Trump brigade, and hey, they were right, they won. But there's an element that won't just take yes for an answer. Like, you have a shot now to truly unify the right, and I get not wanting unity with the left, and I'm right there with them. You do not want, this is not a moment for unity with these people. But it is a unity for the people who aren't opposed to you, who won't hopefully stab you in the back. But we'll see where that goes. So that's going to do it for this Ask or Tell Me Anything. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of your submissions. I usually try to do that, but my voice is about to give out. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We will be back at it again on Tuesday.